There, that's the last crust. And as you can see, it's just turning golden brown on the top. I like to pre-cook my crust because that way they stay crispy after I add the sauce. Now I've made 3 different crusts so I can show you 3 different variations of pizza. The first one is traditional. I'm going to take the sauce that we cooked down, and as you can see it's nice and thick, and I'm going to just spread that around on the pizza before I put my toppings on. These crusts came out really good. Now if you used a baking sheet for your crust, you can pull the crust out of the baking sheet and put your topping on, and then just slide the pizza back into the oven right on the grill. And that'll help brown up that bottom of the pizza. Now to that we're going to add some toppings. Now first I like to sprinkle just a little bit of fresh garlic, and then some portobello mushrooms that we steam sauteed, and we'll spread those around. Mushrooms give it a nice texture. And to that, a little yellow bell pepper, nice and ripe, adds some great color to the pizza, gives it interest. And maybe a little onion, because I'm going to put this back in the oven and cook it for a few more minutes. Basically warm up and soften the vegetables a little bit. And I'm going to top that off with just a little fresh basil. Now you could also, if you want, you could sprinkle a little Italian seasonings on there. Now that's a traditional pizza. Now the second one is basically the same thing. I'm going to put some sauce on it. But the one thing I'm going to do differently here is I'm not going to put it back in the oven. The vegetables are going to be raw. So here's a combination of cooked and raw. And this is a great alternative to a fully cooked pizza. The vegetables are a lot crunchier. It's a great kind of hors d'oeuvre snack. Okay, and for this one, we'll do it a little differently. We'll start with our onion first. Sprinkle it on, and you know you can use any kind of vegetables you want. You're not limited to just what I'm showing you today. And in the Recipes for Life book, there's a recipe for almond cheese. That's another thing you could put on here. So we're going to do that. I'm going to do some red bell pepper. Give it a totally different look. Now these bell peppers, when they're this ripe, they're very sweet. And on this, I'm going to add a little olive that I sliced up earlier. Because we're not going to cook this, this will really add some great flavor to it. And again, a little fresh basil, because again, I'm not going to cook, so that flavor will really come through. And just a sprinkle of fresh garlic. And there's another pizza, just served just like it is. Now my last pizza is what we call a white pizza. And we're not going to use any sauce at all. We're just going to use a little olive oil. And you can take your pizza crust and just drizzle a little olive oil on it. And then work it around. Get a little on the cutting block. Now you could also use like a pastry brush to spread the oil. I'm just going to use my spoon. And you don't have to get it to cover everything, just pretty much the whole pizza. And on this one, I'm going to use my portobello mushrooms, and I'm going to really rely on the garlic and the basil to give this a lot of flavor since it doesn't have a sauce. And here's where I like to use my paper thin sliced tomatoes. Instead of a sauce, we're going to have fresh tomato on there. Put those all around. Pretty well cover the whole surface with the tomatoes. I'm using Roma tomatoes on this because the size is nice. If it's summertime and you have fresh tomatoes out of the garden, that's probably the best. Put those on there like that. And then I'm going to take some of the summer squash we had. I'm going to sprinkle that around. And that kind of gives it that traditional look, that cheesy look. Summer squash is also very flavorful to have on this pizza. And then again, I'm going to top that with a little fresh garlic and some basil. And I'm going to finish it off with just a few chopped olives. Now, doesn't that look wonderful? Here's 3 great ideas. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put this one back in the oven, and I'm going to let it bake for like 5 minutes, just enough to warm up the vegetables. I'm going to go ahead and put this one back. And you know, one of the other things I did with this third crust, when I rolled it out really thin. It makes a paper thin crust, and if you leave it in the oven for about 5 more minutes, it'll be very crispy. And that's kind of a interesting and different texture to a soft crust pizza. And this one, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it up, and we're ready to serve it. I think I'll give it a little try. That's probably one of my favorites. That's good.